We're talking start sit. Look, some of you like that old format we use, going game by game to talk about every running back. We heard you. Some of you like the tiers. Well, guess what? We heard both of you. We're going to do it all. We're going to go game by game, talk about every running back that matters for fantasy, and tell you exactly what tier they should be in. Thankfully, only 2 teams on bye this week. It's the Bears and the Cowboys. All right, now first off, the must-start tier. These are the running backs. If you got them, yeah, still start them. Alvin Kamara, not coming off his best game, but you still have to keep him in that lineup. Bijan Robinson finally had a huge game. This is why you have to start him as well. Saquon Barkley, no worries, keep him in there. Kyron Williams should be good to go off of bye week. He's a must start. Breece Hall, this is why you keep him in your lineup as well. Good game on Monday night. Derrick Henry, don't even ask me about him. And Jonathan Taylor, if he plays, you got to play him. Now, Thursday night, we're going to see the Broncos at the Saints. Again, matchup or not, Kamara is still a must start, at least in our eyes. Javonte Williams, man, hard to trust. I mean, the Saints defense has been really, really bad the last couple of weeks, but does that make Javonte startable?
I think it makes him startable, but again, you can't love this offense. You can't love the situation. He's startable, but I'm going to have to put him only in my flex tier and probably towards the lower end of my flex tier.
I'm going to have to go. Look, I know I've been lower in general on Broncos and Javonte than you most of the year in the preseason. I know the Saints defense has been rough the last couple of weeks, but still, I think the Broncos offense has been worse. So I'm going to call him a desperation play. Look, if you really can't find another running back when there's only 2 teams off, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to look for upside elsewhere. The Jaguars are still in London. No, it's not because the NFL decided just to leave them there. They're playing another game against the Patriots this time. All right, so this may not be a shootout, but both teams could run effectively just because there's bad run defenses on both sides. Let's talk Ramondre Stevenson. Did play last week. If he comes back for this game overseas, is he a strong start?
I don't know about a strong start, but I think you have to strongly consider Ramondre Stevenson. Antonio Gibson did not take over this backfield last week, and this is a great matchup against the Jaguars. I think if Ramondre Stevenson plays, I can't put him quite in the strong start tier, but I'm going to put him in the solid start tier.
Actually, again, assuming he's good to go and it's not like a last-minute game time decision, if Ramondre is good and he's starting again, I think he is a strong start because he was looking good before that foot injury. Gibson did not look good last week. Jaguars are just not good at all, period. So I think if the workload is back to normal, I've got to put him back into where he was, a strong RB2. And you just mentioned Gibson didn't look good last week, but maybe the Jags match up, elevate him.
I'm sure it'll elevate him a little bit, but how good can you really feel here? Only based on the matchup, and if Ramondre Stevenson is out, I'll say Gibson is a flex start.
Yeah, I agree. Can't put him too much higher. Flex, if Mondre is out. If Mondre is back, I mean, probably just an avoid. Now, on the Jacksonville side, Travis Etienne, doubtful to go. This is just my unofficial diagnosis because he's week to week with another injury. That means it's going to be Tank Bigsby, I don't know, possibly in the lead role and the bell cow role. Do you think he'll get that?
I don't know if he'll get the bell cow role, but I think he's going to get the most of the touches here for sure. Because, I mean, we did see a lot of Dearness Johnson last week, but that was more like garbage time when they were getting blown out. This isn't a fantastic matchup against the Patriots, but it also doesn't scare me. I'm going to say Tank Bigsby, assuming Travis Etienne is out, which it looks like, will be a solid start this week.
Agree. Again, it's hard to get too excited about anybody in Jacksonville right now, but I said this is why I said on the waiver wire video, Tank Bigsby, good time to pick him up despite last week's worse than mediocre, bad stat line. The Patriots give up almost 5 yards per carry. I still think this is a good spot for Tank with Etienne probably out. So I think Bigsby could be a strong start this week. But the only thing that might hold him back is the lack of pass catching because Dearness Johnson was the guy who's out there on passing downs. Does this mean we have to have interest in Dearness Johnson?
I think we do, and that's the issue here. Like Tank Bigsby, not a big pass-catching back. So I think Dearness Johnson, because of the matchup and because of the fact that Etienne probably almost certainly will be out, in your PPR formats, he's a flex start.
Could be a flex start. Again, this is more for deeper leagues if you need somebody. He's not going to be my favorite flex. I'm sure there's somebody else with more upside, but I think he could at least be somebody you throw on your flex. Lions, the Vikings, this should be a good one. Big matchup early in the season. Let's see which running game dominates. The Lions have been hard to stop on the ground. So is David Montgomery at this point just a must start?
I mean, debated putting him in the no doubt must starts, but because it's on the road against the Vikings, who have been fantastic against the run, I'm only going to put him in the strong starts. But look, you have David Montgomery. How are you really benching David Montgomery at this point?
Yeah, even if this isn't his best game, it's exactly right. Who do you really feel so much better about? If you got Monty, you probably don't have to sweat it. So I think he's still a very strong start. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs has been a must start for us most weeks, but I'm guessing it's the matchup that moves him just a little bit down.
The matchup and the fact that kind of like David Montgomery has been just as good, sometimes better here. I mean, I still like Gibbs. I'm not benching Gibbs. Again, not a must start, but again, a strong start.
Agree. It's hard to know who's going to get a touchdown. It's hard to know exactly how involved each back will be, but they both still have that massive upside. Even if it's not his best week, how are you sitting Jahmyr Gibbs? You're not. He's still a very strong start. Now for Minnesota, they're hoping Aaron Jones will be good to go. We are hoping he's good to go. Although even if he is, Detroit's got a strong run defense. So what do you feel about Aaron Jones?
Yeah, coming off an injury against this strong Lions run defense, most weeks I'm going to put Aaron Jones in the strong start, but this week I'm only going to put him in the solid start tier.
That seems fair. Again, based on the way Detroit has looked, again, defensively, he's always going to be at least a solid start if he's healthy. I think he'll be good to go after the bye. He got some time to rest, so I think solid, meaning you can start him and feel pretty good. And then Ty Chandler, I'm guessing is only interesting if Aaron Jones is out, or do you think he might have standalone value?
I mean, he'll have some value in really deep leagues if Aaron Jones plays, but really only if Aaron Jones is out. If Aaron Jones is out, again, because of the tough matchup and the fact that he's Ty Chandler, not Aaron Jones, I'll put him as a flex.
I think that makes sense. If Jones is completely out, you can flex Ty Chandler. If Jones is in, then you just can avoid him. All right, next up is the Titans at the Bills. This is, I guess, a rematch of the Music City Miracle. Anybody who technically remembers that matchup, but look. Let's talk Titans run game. Tony Pollard has been it. Tyjae Spears went out early last week. Tony Pollard has been good. Does he keep it going on the road against Buffalo?
I don't see why not. This Bills run defense doesn't scare me at all. They just gave Breece Hall a get-right game on Monday night. Tony Pollard's been great. I got to put Tony Pollard in the strong start tier this week.
Yeah, and I talked about this, which is why I thought Breece Hall would go off in week 6. The Buffalo run defense actually has not been that good. Their pass defense has. I don't think I'm worried about the passing game here in Tennessee. But look, Buffalo will give up yards to the ground. Pollard has been getting them. He's a strong start here. And because of that defensive matchup and how good Pollard has been, I'll tell you what, also, if you're taking your picks early in the week on Underdog, you look right now, 61.5 rushing yards. I'm going higher on that. And if you aren't on Underdog, I'll tell you what, you can take that pick. You combine it with the new customer special free pick. It's Bo Nix just getting 1 yard on Thursday night. That's right. Take the higher on 0.5 total yards. You get that free pick if you sign up for the very first time on Underdog using code NGAME. And that also gets you a deposit match up to $1,000 worth of bonus cash. Now for Buffalo, James Cook, their lead back, was out on Monday night. It's kind of a last second, somewhat surprising scratch. So if he's good to go for week 7, is he just right back in your lineup?
He is. He's right back in my lineup. He's been great this year. This Buffalo run game looks good. If he's playing and he's good to go, he's a strong start.
Agree. Tennessee's run defense hasn't been that bad this year, but still, Cook is the featured back here. As good as Ray Davis looked, I don't think he's taken over the job or anything. So if I have Cook, he's still a strong start. Speaking of Ray Davis, do the Bills have something here? What if Cook is either out or questionable? Where do you put Ray Davis?
Yeah, if Cook is completely out, I think you got to have Ray Davis as a solid start this week. It looks like he's the guy they're going to prefer, and he looked really good on Monday night. So assuming Cook is completely out, Ray Davis a solid start.
And the fact that Buffalo does want to establish the run, not having Josh Allen pass quite as much, it's still annoying that he will vulture those touchdowns at the goal line as he has and will continue to do, but still. If Cook is out, I think you can definitely flex Ray Davis. If Cook is in, look, as good as he looked, I don't think there's enough touches here, so I'll probably just sit him. All right, next up, the Dolphins are going to take on the Colts. Devon Achane, well, I mean, besides the fact that he has moved out of the must-start territory because the Dolphins offense has looked horrendous. Achane was in the concussion protocol as well. It sounds like he's in the later stages, but how do you feel about Achane regardless?
I mean, you can't feel great. It's a great matchup against the Colts, but I mean, this offense, like you said, but Achane has upside. He catches passes. I think if he plays, I'm going to put him in a solid start just because of the matchup.
Well, look, I'll say I like the matchup. Colts defense still one of the worst out there. I think the bye week, I'm going to try to give Mike McDaniel some credit and see that, maybe he figured out some ways to get Achane the ball and make some positive gains here. I don't know if I can put him much higher than a flex option, though, just because I'm still skeptical. Raheem Mostert did see more action. Remember, he's actually back and healthy for now. So what do you think about Mostert either with or without Achane?
I mean, either way, I think he's kind of the same here. Like, he needs a touchdown really to pay off for you. So, desperation flex.
I think he's a flex if Achane is out. Look, if I have Achane as a flex, I can't have Mostert higher, right? So, no Achane, I might feel good enough about Mostert. If Achane's playing, I'm just going to sit Mostert. And I think the same has to go for Jalen Wright. I mean, look, he showed some juice, and maybe he's a better runner right now than Mostert, but probably not enough opportunities here.
No, same thing as Mostert for me. He's a, with or without Achane, he's a desperation flex.
Now on the Colts side, if JT is good, you just roll him, no questions asked. We don't have to consider a player like Trey Sermon. But what if JT is out? What do you do with Sermon this week?
He's okay. I mean, he'll get the carries. What was frustrating about last week was after catching 6 passes the week before, no catches last week. So you don't know if you're getting anything in the receiving game. He could score, but he could not. So I think I can only put him in as a desperation flex this week.
Well, if there was good news for Trey Sermon, he definitely dominated the carries. He got enough run to be valuable, just didn't do anything with them. Didn't score, and like you said, didn't catch passes. It is the Dolphins' run defense, which is not good. So I'll say he at least could be a decent flex option, again, assuming Taylor is completely out. Tyler Goodson actually looked a little bit better than Sermon as a runner, but is there enough opportunity here?
Probably not. I mean, he does catch passes, I guess, a little bit. So in your PPR league, maybe you could desperation flex him, but I'm probably just going to avoid Tyler Goodson.
Yeah, with not that many teams off this week, it's getting a little deep here. I mean, this is true desperation flex, but for the most part, you should just avoid. Seahawks going to take on the Falcons. These are two teams headed in opposite directions. Kenneth Walker, well, at least he still got you some fantasy points last week. Not his most efficient game as a runner. Where do you think he falls this week?
The nice thing about Kenneth Walker, like you said, that pass catching, he's been so involved as a pass catcher this year that even when he doesn't have big rushing games like the last 2 games, he still gets you great fantasy points. Kenneth Walker, for me, every week he's healthy, is going to be a strong start.
Yeah, look, a lot of running backs. This is Falcons defense that right now is number 6 against running backs in fantasy points per game allowed, a road game against a team that puts up points. But it's Kenneth Walker. He can always score, rip off a big run, and he's catching passes, so he's just always a strong start. Zach Charbonnet is not. I mean, look, right now I'm just going to say he's an avoid for me unless Kenneth Walker is just completely out, which he's not.
Right. You're just praying for a touchdown. That's not enough here. He's an avoid.
And for Atlanta, again, Bijan showed why you don't bench him, and some people actually thought about it, believe it or not. What about Tyler Algier, though? He had himself a nice game, too.
He did, but that was the Panthers. I mean, I know the Seahawks have looked bad, but still, again, another guy, you need him to fall in the end zone to really feel good about it. I'm going to put Tyler Algier as an avoid.
Well, yeah, I definitely don't expect him to do what he did, and a lot of those points did come in the fourth quarter, and they were up big. But I will say, if I'm desperate and I need somebody, at least we know Algier always has some touchdown potential. He is still involved, so he's not the worst of the desperation flex options. I think he's a decent play. Now, hopefully this video helps you with all your running back start-sit decisions, but if you still have questions for start-sit, waiver wire trades, or anything fantasy football related, use the Draft Lane app because that connects you directly with Chris and myself for all your fantasy football needs. Download it for free right now. Texans taking on the Packers. A couple of workhorses here battling it out. Joe Mixon is back, and man, he's looked good in both games that he's played in Houston. I mean, is there any reason not to start him?
No, and if he has another game like he just had, I mean, we're probably going to have to put him in the no doubt must starts, but for this week, he's a strong start.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see one more game. Again, there's really no reason not to start him, so we'll just say he's a very strong start. And Josh Jacobs, usually a strong start. I know this Texans defense is tough, but is anything going to move him down for you?
He hasn't had the fantasy results we've wanted. He's getting the usage and he's looking good, but for some reason, the touchdowns just aren't there. But it would be really hard for me to bench Josh Jacobs. I'm going to still put him in the strong starts.
Yeah, Jacobs is moving more towards like a really high floor player, not so much the ceiling. The problem is that Jordan Love keeps throwing touchdowns. Jacobs is not on a team where they really don't have as much of a pass attack and have to run it near the goal line. But still, Jacobs is always a solid start. And again, I'm going to say a solid start this week just because I don't know how high the ceiling is in this matchup. But he's on the upper end of that tier. Talk about teams going in different directions. There's the Bengals and then there's the Browns. It wasn't the greatest game on the ground for the Bengals. Zach Moss, do you think he's just not healthy or is he fading from this backfield?
Probably a little of both, but that doesn't help you for your fantasy team. Yeah, Zach Moss with Chase Brown emerging, not looking great. It's not the best matchup against this Browns run defense. I'm only going to say Zach Moss in my flex tier.
Yeah, it might be early, to proclaim there's like a takeover going on here. But again, Moss, I don't think he is 100% based on that injury from last week. I really don't want to start him. It's the Browns, so I'll just say he's a flex option, but not a great one. And then Chase Brown, it didn't explode or anything, but he had probably his most effective game. He's getting more touches. I don't know. Do you think he's higher than Moss?
I think he's higher than Moss, but I'm still going to keep him in the flex tier because it's not like he's completely taken over this backfield or anything, but he would be towards the upper end of the flex tier.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I can't quite say he's a rock solid fantasy option just yet, and the Browns defense at least isn't that bad. So he's a good flex. And a lot of questions about the Browns in general, but especially the backfield. Jerome Ford, injured last week. Nick Chubb, on the way back. If Nick Chubb is activated, are you activating him on your roster?
No chance. First game back from a major knee injury, he's going to be very limited. He's going to be on my avoid this week.
Yeah, I thought you'd say that. And look, come on. This Bengals-Browns game is probably not going to be very high scoring. You have, the Browns who can't score at all, basically. The Bengals probably will not have to put their foot on the gas pedal too much. I think this is going to be a game where you don't really want anything other than those obvious studs, and that's in the passing game. So I'm going to say avoid Nick Chubb, even if he's activated. Deontay Foreman now actually be the running back you want, though, because if Ford is out and Chubb isn't activated, could Foreman be a workhorse?
I think even if Chubb is activated, Foreman could be a workhorse, but what is that really worth in this offense? He was basically the workhorse last week because Ford was out almost the entire game. I'm not playing Deontay Foreman. He's also going to be in my avoid tier.
Well, I'll say if that scenario plays out where Ford is out, it's very possible, and Chubb is either not active or going to be on a pitch count, I think Foreman at least should be a flex consideration just because of sheer volume. Eagles at the Giants. All right. So Saquon Barkley, move on. You're starting him. But this is where it gets complicated. Tyrone Tracy has looked good for 2 straight weeks, but what if Devin Singletary is back? What do you do with Singletary?
Against this Eagles defense, with the possibility of Tyrone Tracy taking touches from him, I can only say Singletary is a flex, and even at that, it's a risky one.
Agree, risky because, look, the Eagles have not been blowing teams out. In fact, they're barely beating bad teams. So I don't feel like it's the game script that's the issue here. It's just the fact that it's the Giants offense still. Devin Singletary in some games will be a solid start. In this one, he's just a flex option. And then the real question is, what if you just picked up Tyrone Tracy? And then Devin Singletary comes back, what do you do with Tyrone Tracy?
Yeah, again, if Devin Singletary is back, you can't feel good about him. I probably would avoid him this week. If Devin Singletary is out, I think Tyrone Tracy is a solid start.
Yeah, well, here's what I like is that Tracy not only looked good as a runner, but he is a pretty good pass catcher. Remember, this is a guy who has good hands. He's converted to running back, and he can be flexed if Singletary is out. He is a solid start. Next on the slate is the Raiders at the Rams. Not sure how many points are going to be scored in this game, especially on the ground. But look, I think you do still have to start Kyren Williams no matter what. Do you have to start Alexander Mattison?
You don't have to, but I think even if Zamir White plays this week finally, I still think this is probably Madison's backfield. It's the Rams, not a terrible defense. I'll put him in my flex tier.
Only because of the touches and the opportunity. Yeah, I know. It would be hypocritical to say you can't start him at all. He's the guy in the backfield. He has scored some touchdowns. He does get some receptions. I don't love it, but he is a flex option. We haven't heard from Zoomer White in a couple of weeks. If he returns, is there any way you can justify playing him?
Nope. He's definitely in my avoid tier.
Absolutely an avoid and a drop if you're still hanging on for hope. Next up is the Panthers at the Commanders. All right, now Chuba Hubbard has been rock solid for the past several weeks. Does he keep it going on the road against this Washington defense?
I don't see why not. It's the Commanders. They're giving up the most explosive runs in the entire NFL. Chuba Hubbard's had plenty of explosive runs. He's a very strong start this week.
Agree. Very strong. I mean, he's a high-end RB2 in your typical 12-man league. Again, there's really no reason to move off of Chuba at this point if you've been rolling with him. Now, on the Washington side, B-Rob was out last week. If he's able to give it a go and play in Week 7, is Brian Robinson Jr. a strong start?
I think he has to be. It's the Panthers. They're terrible against the run. They give up a ton of touchdowns. They just give up 3 touchdowns to Bijan and Tyler Algier. If Brian Robinson plays this week, he's a strong start.
Yeah, not only do they give up the most rushing touchdowns with 12, but they've given up by far the most rushing yards total. I mean, this could be a smash spot for B-Rob. I almost want to say he's a must start if he's good to go, but let's just say he's a very strong start here. And in B-Rob's absence, Austin Eckler looked pretty good despite a tough Baltimore run defense on the other side. But if B-Rob is back, does Eckler just go back to being a flex option?
No, because the matchup I think is so good that even if Brian Robinson is back, I still think Eckler is a solid start this week. Look at what Algier just did. I think even with Brian Robinson, Eckler is still a solid start.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, it is the Panthers, right? And the defense is that bad, just roll with him. I'll say he's a high-end flex for me. I mean, look, this always depends on your other options here. Maybe I'm just feeling like B-Rob will eat so much there might be nothing left for Eckler. But yeah, he's still a decent option. All right, now on paper, this promises to be the game of the week. Chiefs at 49ers, but yeah, these teams don't feel quite the same as last year, at least for fantasy. But let's talk Chiefs run game. It's Kareem Hunt. I mean, that's it. It's Kareem Hunt. Is Kareem Hunt going to be the RB1, and is he a fantasy starter?
I guess so. It looks that way, and it's like the 49ers run defense. It's not the worst, but it's certainly not the best. It shouldn't scare you away from him. He's got touchdown upside. I think this week Kareem Hunt is a solid start.
Yeah, not a great spot on the road, but still, like I said, I mean, we've seen now Kareem Hunt the past week before the bye. It was it. Like, forget Carson Steele. Forget whoever else you might have thought was going to get touches in the backfield. So just through sheer volume, I think he's a solid start. Now, the Niners backfield has become way more complicated than we'd like. Jordan Mason was a must start, basically, until he hurt his shoulder last week. So let's assume Jordan Mason's good to go. Does he go back to being a must start for you?
No, because again, coming off this injury and this tough Chiefs run defense, I still, like, for the most part, I'm probably playing Jordan Mason if he plays. But because of the matchup and some risk with the injury, I'm only going to say a strong start this week.
Yeah, it surprised me to find out the Chiefs right now are the #1 toughest run defense against running backs for fantasy purposes. That's not a good thing. And also, you got to wonder if maybe they'll start to limit his workload. Garendo looked good for a minute there, the injury. So it's still a strong start for me, I think, just because he's in this offense. But now we have to take a look at Isaac Garendo, the rookie who is the backup to the backup, but might be the starter if Mason is out. I mean, what do you do with Garendo? Does he somehow make it into your starting lineup if Mason isn't good to go?
Only if Mason is completely out, I could flex Garendo, because we saw last week, Patrick Taylor got most of the work here. And I know Garendo had that long run, and he can do that, which is why I think he's worth a flex, but only if Jordan Mason is out.
Yeah, that makes sense because, again, the matchup against this Chiefs defense, and also who knows exactly how many points they'll put up, it's still risky. I mean, even if Mason is out, people might rush to pick up Garendo and force him into the lineup. I think that might be a mistake. I'll say he can be flexed, but that's as far as I'll go. Would you go higher with Patrick Taylor because of that pass catching?
Probably not. They're just both going to be flexes for me, assuming, again, that Jordan Mason is completely out.
Agree. And even then, like, honestly, I think Patrick Taylor's probably just an avoid for me. I'll look for a guy who I think is going to get more upside in a different matchup. On Sunday night, we're going to have what should be a defensive struggle of the Jets and the Steelers. Tough run defenses. You still start Breece Hall. Do you start Braylon Allen, though?
Not a good spot for him. I'm avoiding Braylon Allen.
Expect this to be a low-scoring game. Braylon Allen's pretty much just a handcuff right now. I know some people want to keep some hope in him. I think he's just an avoid right now. And look, just when I was ready to give up on Najee Harris, there he goes. Best game of the year. Long touchdown run. But it's against the Jets here. I mean, how good do you feel about Najee?
Better than I felt, because look, the Jets defense doesn't even look that good. Look what Ray Davis just did to this defense. I mean, is this even a good defense anymore? I'm being honest here. Maybe they really need Hassan Reddick more than they think. So, but still, it's Najee Harris. I'm not chasing last week's game. I'll say, because he gets the volume and because I don't trust the Jets defense, low end of the solid starts for me.
I guess that's reasonable. And look, I don't trust Arthur Smith of the Steelers offense anymore, but did look good. Low end, solid. That's fair. You might not have noticed, but Jaylen Warren did come back and he played in week 6, didn't do a whole lot. Is he on the radar anywhere?
No, this is another guy you need him to fall into the end zone just to be like, okay, thankfully he didn't kill me. I'm going to avoid Jaylen Warren.
Yeah, and I don't think it's just the injury. It's the fact that he was barely involved even before then. This seems like it's Najee's backfield. Warren can just be avoided. Now we're going to have 2 Monday night contests once again. The first one is the Ravens at the Bucks. All right, so King Henry is still the king. What about Justice Hill? Any juice in this matchup?
Nah, even last week when I thought, oh, maybe this will be a shootout. I mean, it wasn't. The Commanders were losing the whole game, but even then he barely gets involved. This is getting way too desperate. I'm going to avoid Justice Hill.
Yeah, I mean, he's always at best a desperation flex. You really shouldn't need to go there, I don't think, this week, so let's just avoid him. All right, now the Bucks may have a 3-headed monster on their hands. That's right. Just when you thought Bucky Irving was going to run away with that starting running back job, not so fast. All right, but let's start with Bucky Irving. Had himself a nice game statistically against the Saints. Gonna go against this Ravens defense, though.
Yeah, that definitely puts a little damper on him. It's a tough defense, but at the same time, I mean, Eckler just had a decent game against them. The Bucs' run defense actually looks good. Bucky Irving this week, high-end flex start because of the matchup, but I'm tempted to pull him in the solid tier.
Yeah, actually, I'm thinking more low-end solid tier. I mean, he's still going to probably be the lead back in terms of carries. Yeah, Baltimore has that funnel defense, as we know. Terrible against the pass, but strong against the run, but Bucky has looked so good. He does have some touchdown upside, so I think just the way the Bucs offense is rolling, I still think he's a pretty solid start. What makes things complicated, though, is Sean Tucker. Yeah, Sean Tucker didn't just lead the Bucs in rushing. He actually led the NFL in rushing in week 6. Do you think Sean Tucker gets involved more than we want this week?
Probably. I mean, he only had 1 touch in the first half, but he looked good in that second half, so maybe they use him a bit more. But again, I mean, it's a tough matchup against the Ravens. I don't want to chase last week. He's going to be more like the lower end of the flex.
Yeah, I really think this is going to be this week's ultimate trap play. People are going to get carried away by last week. Just think Jawan Jennings. Remember him? Remember that week? I kind of think that's what's happening here. The Saints defense just rolled over as they have for a couple of weeks now. Baltimore will not do that. Tampa Bay will not score 50 points. So, oh man, desperation flex. And oh yeah, remember Rachaad White? Well, he's still there, but is he going to play? And if he does, are we still in on him?
You got to be very nervous if he plays here. I can only put Rachaad White as a flex if he plays.
I mean, he will probably get more touches than guys like Sean Tucker, and he still can catch some passes, but again, just a flex. And then the second Monday night game is going to be the Chargers at the Cardinals. Let's talk J.K. Dobbins. How to bounce back after the bye. Really strong game. Can he do it at Arizona?
Why not? This is even a better matchup for him than he had last week. I mean, he's still the workhorse running back here. I think J.K. Dobbins has to be in the strong start tier this week.
I think he has to be as well. Arizona offensively has struggled for a couple of weeks now, very possibly without Marvin Harrison Jr. This could be a good game script for the Chargers to just sit back and run like they want to do. No Gus to eat into his touches. Strong start, J.K. Dobbins. And we did see the rookie Kamani Vidal not only play, but score a touchdown in the first quarter. Is that enough to put him on the flex radar, though?
No, I mean, that was a wheel route touchdown pass. His first touch ever, by the way, so congrats to him. But I'm not chasing that again. I think Kimani Vidal Still too soon for him. He's going to be on my avoid tier.
I could say it desperation flex, but how desperate are you? I mean, not that many teams were on bye this week, so stash him, but bench him. Now, like a lot of Cardinals, James Conner coming off a disappointing week 6. Where do you put him this week going against that really tough Chargers run defense?
Yeah, it is really tough, and man, you never know what you're going to get from this Cardinals offense. But James Conner has been mostly good this year, so even in this tough matchup, I'll say he's a solid start.
I think that's fair. Keep him as a solid start. He is still the guy there in that backfield. He still has some upside. You figure if Harrison's out, they're going to scheme ways to get Conner more involved, maybe even as a pass catcher. So still solid, even if he doesn't have the highest ceiling this week. And do you think we see any more of the rookie Trey Benson?
Probably not. This guy's also going to be an avoid for me.
Too soon. Not a good spot for him. Just avoid. Got start to say questions at other positions? We got you covered. Check out this week's playlist for all the fantasy advice you need.